Welcome to The Future is Bright, the Nevada Women's Fund podcast, where we shine a light on the transformative impact of women across Northern Nevada. Join us as we dive into inspiring stories of meaningful conversations and critical issues that highlight the limitless potential of women as drivers of positive change.
Patti Pietsch Weiske founded Dress for Success Reno, Northern Nevada, from her home in 2016. Dress for Success empowers women so that they can achieve economic independence by providing a network of support, professional attire, and the development tools to help them thrive in work and life. Now in its 7th year of helping women in Reno, Dress for Success Reno, Northern Nevada, has helped over 900 women find self-worth, self-confidence, and economic stability. Patti has lived in Reno for 35 years and is married with 2 children. Nancy's father taught her about philanthropy. He believed, as did Winston Churchill, that, quote, "We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give," end quote. So while she was busy making a living as a teacher, professor, writer, editor, director of Northeastern Nevada Professional Development, founding director of the Great Basin Writing Project, field director for the National Writing Project, and chair of Nevada Women's Fund, and most recently, Giving Chair member. Nancy is still a fierce advocate for equity and dignity through her work in the Greater Good Council and the Women's Giving Circle at the Community Foundation of Northern Nevada. Gonna take a deep breath, and if you don't mind, we're just gonna kind of connect. We're gonna hold hands, and we'll just take a deep breath. Get centered in the room. We're here now, Nevada Women's Fund podcast. Okay,
The Future is Bright.
the future is bright.
My hand was less sweaty podcast too.
I have a sweaty hand podcast right now for some reason.
Well, we are here. Welcome, Nevada Women's Fund. The
Hello,
Future is
Kalila.
Bright podcast, Miss Isla.
So happy to be here.
I am so happy to be here with you. We just finished our first podcast, and we are on to our second.
Our second podcast celebrating female philanthropy.
The launch of the podcast. Yay!
Yes.
I'm so excited. And we have 2 new guests today. And our first is, I have to make sure to get this right, Patti Pietsch Weiske.
You got it right.
Oh, I did it! Yeah!
That was right.
I did it. Okay, good. And our second guest is Miss Nancy Remington. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for asking.
You are our first guest for the launch of our podcast. Well, like our first group of guests for the podcast.
Really?
So, yes.
Well, thanks for having us on then.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a really exciting opportunity for Nevada Women's Fund. And when I truly was given the opportunity to come up with 6 topics and 12 guests, and it was fairly easy to come up with the 6 topics. And then once those were chosen, it really organically, I knew who I wanted.
That's
as
so
guests.
interesting because I asked you earlier, how did you come to pick the guests that you chose for the podcast, these first podcasts?
Yeah.
How did you do that for this one?
For this one, I wanted to, although Nevada Women's Fund is the overarching theme of the podcast, there's so much more that goes into the success of a nonprofit. And for me, I think that it's our community and it's the people in our community. So one of the nonprofits that I think is doing incredible work in Northern Nevada and actually got a little boost from Nevada Women's Fund at the beginning, but I'm just honored to follow her journey, has been Patti with Dress for Success.
Thanks so much, Isla.
And then I look at the really incredible women that are in the nonprofit space today, and that maybe we take for granted the opportunities that we have in this space and the decisions that we get to make and the money that we're able to raise. And I look back 40 years at some of the women I've been able to meet And I recognize that there were some trailblazers who made it possible for us to be here today, and Nancy Remington is one of them. And so to be able to talk from a historical perspective of what philanthropy looked like for a woman in the 80s and 90s, that gave Patti and I the ability to be executive directors and presidents of nonprofits today. I just want to learn from everything Nancy has to say.
I love that. Welcome, Miss Nancy Remington, philanthropist.
With age comes wisdom, I guess.
I hear that, honey. Let's talk about that. That's the truth. Yes. And that's why you're here. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love that. And I love that you chose these two because I think it's important for us to talk about like specifically what they do and also to hear about, like you said, how, what that used to look like, and how it's evolved and elevated, and how we can do it better, right? And how we can do it better, more, faster, stronger. And so I think it's you are celebrating 7 years of Dress for Success.
Celebrating our 7th year.
Yay!
Yes. And when you talk that way about the 80s type of thing, I was inspired by my mom's own journey. And even when I applied to bring Dress for Success here, that was in my business plan. It was my mom's journey. I just didn't want that to continue to replicate. And her journey was that she had 5 amazing children, but she was not able to start a career until she finished raising them all. And so she started right when the last one was finishing high school. She started going into business after business because she had such a huge drive. She graduated from college and she wanted to be a career person, but it was very difficult.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Your mom went to college after all 5 kids graduated from high school?
No, she did beforehand.
Okay.
Yes, beforehand. But she was never able to use her education. It was hard. And so she was never able to be the breadwinner. And I saw that in her all the time being raised. I always thought it was hard for me to see her not reach her potential. So it was a big thing for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Did you realize that she wasn't able to realize her potential then? Or did you, did that become something that you knew about?
I knew it then. I knew it then. She was very entrepreneurial and went into several different businesses. And I just knew it then. She was my motivation to go to college. Was my motivation to start, part of my motivation to start Dress for Success.
Did your mom talk about you going to college when you were growing up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
She did. She wanted, both of my parents were college grads, wanted all 5 of us to go. 2 of us did go. And I just remember that. I mean, she could have gone into anything, really. But she did raise 5 amazing children that she will never regret doing. So
that's a feat itself. 5 kids. That's amazing. As a mom, I know. I only have 2, so 5 is a lot. And for you, Miss Nancy, who inspired you to get into philanthropy, and who did you watch, if there was someone that did?
Well, I watched my father.
Okay.
And largely because he was the kid in the picture when he was going to grade school that didn't have shoes on his feet, in the front row, and didn't have shoes on. And he was very successful, but he was also always very committed to the community, very generous, had I call it a stance in philanthropy, not just giving here and there. It was part of his being. And
it's in his DNA.
It was. And he was the person, I think, we have a big family. I have 2 siblings, and we stay close. And they all have children, and their children have children, and even some of the grandchildren have children. So, and we try to keep that alive within the family. And we have some little methods of doing that.
I was going to ask you that, if you see that kind of ripple effect throughout your other siblings with their kids and in their lives.
We have really worked on that as a
it's been
family. It's a purposeful thing.
I love that.
I mean, I think it was unintentional to begin with. We just grew up and had our careers and, families and so forth. But along the way, we started noticing things and talking about it. So it's an intentional
I would like
way
to
of being.
ask a couple more questions about
Sure.
that. So you learned the importance of giving back in philanthropy from your father, and then you instilled that in your children, who are then instilled it in your grandchildren. And now as a family, it's
part of what we celebrate and part of what we do, both as our sort of nuclear family, but that's 25, so that's big. And then my siblings and their families, we gather every 3 years. We missed a year during COVID, but since parents have passed away, and celebrate that. I mean, we have fun and get to know each other and so forth too, but we think of it as an investment in family, which then spreads out to all kinds of different communities.
right.
So
Do you, as a family, do you come together and say, this is what we want to focus on this year?
not so much. What we do, we've tried to, you can control things too much, and we have discussions about that.
Uh-oh, with age comes wisdom. Is that what you're telling me?
I have an older brother who would like to, and my younger sister would like to tell everybody what to do.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Give us the tea on the siblings, Nancy.
less
I love that.
directive because
We need all
I think
types.
because I was a teacher and so forth. So, but we send birthday cards to everybody in the family every year. The children between 6 and 22 receive cash with directions to. They can spend a third of it. They can. They should save a third of it for college, invest it or save it depending on how old they are, and a third for giving. And we find it pretty easy to find ways for the kids. I started explaining it with I started this and started with my kids saying, you can say, buy your mom a gift for Christmas with your own money. And then it becomes, then when they go to school, which is 6, I mean, we thought about the age that this should happen because you realize there's a bigger world out there. There are things that they have drives for coats and things at school, so you start paying attention to that.
And giving little drops of this is how you can spend your money, this is how you can give.
Yes. And then when we all get together, we talk about the giving.
On a
what they
larger
do.
scale. With the kids in the room. And that starts when they're it's in the DNA. So that's just something that happens is they come out of the womb. You guys are talking about it, and
I
oh
say
my
that
gosh,
because it's a stance. Because it's
you did say stance,
it's
so
not
it's
just something that we do. It's a belief in if you contribute as you can to your community, everybody's better.
Can you repeat that?
You want to write that down?
I think that we need to repeat that. Everybody, slow down. Stop on everything. Can you repeat that, please?
The philanthropic stance is if you contribute to your community, everyone is better off.
Everyone. In all places, in all sizes, shapes, colors, all of it. I love that.
And that's the family. The work that I do with women particularly has evolved over time because I was a professor, teacher for the years that I worked, an educator broadly. And at community colleges, and I worked at 3 of them in Nevada, most of our population was returning female students. Some young, but a lot of them had families, and they came back to school. And I saw that the power that gave them, the confidence that it gave them, and so forth, started, paying more attention to that. So when I no longer was working, I Actually, I was a board member for the Nevada Women's Fund. My contemporaries, a lot of them were the people that gathered and put this together.
Yes.
So, and that was largely because it was the men that were making the decisions where money went.
And you ladies were like,
Let's talk about that for a second.
yes. I
in
feel
a different way.
Yeah, I feel like when you were talking about, what you're doing with philanthropy, I just thought, and then you were talking about your family and the stance that you have with the kids and teaching them to give 1/3 here, 1/3 here, 1/3. I was like, these are the kind of reality shows that I want to watch. Like, put a reality show, like put a camera in her house, right? And show me how to raise kids where the stance and like the DNA of your family is philanthropy and giving.
Right.
I don't want to see anybody fighting and, and the drama. I want to see like the real life. How do we make this world a better place? How do we teach the kids this is what you do when you get your money, And so I think that's brilliant.
So, Nancy, when you and some of the founders of Nevada Women's Fund got together, this is so good. So it was 40 years ago, and I've heard the stories. I've heard stories like,
Where's the
we
tissue?
were tired of our husbands telling us who to write the check to because we knew that we could raise the money and write the check ourselves. So you came together and you knew that you wanted to impact our community. And you determined it was through education, and you did that through educational scholarships. How did you come to that decision? Do you know? Do you recall?
I don't. I think it was a natural outgrowth of talking about what enables women to better their lives, to have some control over their lives, and education. And because and many of the women were educators, and many of them had either, and you find both, had either had an education, had the advantages of an education, and some hadn't and wished they had. So it's a mixed view of things that way. So it was purely kind of serendipitous. It just evolved.
Interesting. And so two things came out of it. One was the fundraising to empower women through education. And much like what you said, there's a line that we often say at Nevada Women's Fund: when you educate a woman, you uplift a family. When you uplift a family, you strengthen a community, which is another way of the beautiful thing you said earlier. But it also gave women the opportunity to have a seat at the table because you created an organization with a structured board for women to really cut their teeth on and learn how to be leaders in a boardroom and to be decision makers. And I think for 35 years, Kalila, men weren't allowed on the Nevada Women's Fund board.
I'm fine with that. I think that's amazing. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. You got to lay the groundwork. You know what?
That's why I started with my father.
I didn't. Yes, I didn't want to put poo on the drama, right? Like, I like to watch shows. Sometimes I just need to veg out. So I'm gonna ask for a little bit of the spill the tea, which means, can you give us a little insight into what that looks like as a woman that comes home and says, we're going to start this because we want to decide where the money goes and we want to start doing it our way. What does that conversation in your household look like?
Well, I have to say, I was not involved in the Nevada Women's Fund in the beginning. I admired the women who were. I was struggling as a teacher and so forth, and knew about the Nevada Women's Fund. And now some of the people who were there in the beginning are my colleagues in the Giving Circle. That's how I know these stories. Jennifer Satre tells about coming to the office with the babies, in toddlers and babies hanging around and having to do that when they were stuffing envelopes. Yeah. So it was that kind of organization initially. Yeah. And as organizations grow, you have to be dynamic and grow or you don't survive. It became more formalized, more structure and a board and so forth. But initially, it was women sitting around a table saying, what can we do?
Yeah. And then in your experience, Patti, thank you for sharing that. I think that's fascinating to think about what you were talking about, right? The men being in control of the money.
I think there's a quote, and I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm not quoting it, but Fritzy Erickson talked about a story about one of the leaders in our community in the 80s patting her on the back and saying, "Oh, this is really cute. I know it's not going to work out, but while you have fun doing this while you can." Fast forward 40 years, $10 million.
Well, and I think a lot of us
Drop
have
the mic.
experienced that from
That's how that
situations.
stuff happened. I almost cursed, and I'm so happy I did it.
We
That's
all
how
have
that
stories
happens,
of
right? Yeah.
those kinds of things.
And in your experience, like, bravo, right? And I love it when people do that. They're like, good job with your little women's fun, you know? For you, you are a gal after my own heart, darling. You're a fashion file. So I remember when you started the Dress for Success, I was like, how do I help? How do I get involved in this? Because I love clothing and I love, I'm a stylist. And so that's basically what you're doing is you're doing that and more, offering women this opportunity to present themselves well and giving them an opportunity to elevate, what they look like, their appearance. And so for you, what made you want to get involved in that and help women on that level?
Well, for me, it happened when during the recession, couldn't find a job anywhere. And so I applied. I had years of experience in PR and nobody was hiring anyone during that time. And so I went to work at a retail store and I was hired. And I was grateful really to have a job, but it was $10 an hour. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't sell enough, I would, they would dock your pay and the whole thing. And, I've been very fortunate. I'm married. I always had a second income, but during the recession, it didn't really go so well. So I was really inspired by a lot of women that would come to work and talk about, they had their emotions they were raw. They're right out there. And even the customers that would come in, the women would share stories of health problems or abuse or anything like that. And I just found it very fascinating that we can find comfort in strangers and just coming to a store, whether you're working there, whether you're shopping and you're just talking to a nobody behind the register. It is really, it helps. It's helping. So when I left there, I just thought I really wanted to uplift women and help women make more than $10 an hour, because I was shocked at that, honestly. I had started my career at the Chamber of Commerce making more than $10 an hour, and that was a long time ago. So I was really shocked that women were supporting families on that pay. And they were very smart. They really had a lot of experience, people skills, everything, but they just didn't know how to navigate even what should they do. They didn't know many people in the community. I had come from organizations where I had been able to build a network. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I left, I really wanted to volunteer, but there wasn't something that included clothing. And so I found Dress for Success and thought, I really want it here in the North. It was in Las Vegas at the time and wanted it here. And that was my inspiration.
Didn't you start out of your garage?
I did.
Incredible. I love
that.
that.
Tell us what that looks like.
Okay. What that looks like is that... and
then we want to hear how your husband felt about this.
You don't have any money, right?
Like, what are you doing? Have you gone... I almost cursed. It might get a start. Okay. Have you gone crazy? Like, what?
Yeah. I mean, you have zero money. Yeah. Like, none. So you learn how to start asking for everything, right?
That's good.
So it started with one store fixture and then one mannequin. I mean, I would just, anytime I found something, I would load up my car and bring it in. So pretty soon, all the windows in my house, they all had a mannequin in the front.
Oh, you had them in the house.
Mannequins in the house.
It wasn't creepy at all.
I have a picture
Her husband's like, what is happening? You're going. Was he like that? Was he like, or was it just go with it?
I have to say that he's really been supportive, and I'm not just saying that. He really
he has to be, right? It would fall apart.
What's he gonna? Yeah, I mean, it's anybody that can start a nonprofit with no money and not have a backup salary. I mean, kudos to them. I don't know how you could do that because my husband truly financially supported so that we could get things started. But it really was my network in the community from all the years of working that helped me knock on someone's door and say, this is what I'm doing. And they'd say, you're crazy. One person sat with me at lunch and said,
I love that.
You don't want to work with volunteers or that group of you don't want that, Patti. And I'm like, I don't.
What did you do with that information?
It
When people would
motivated
say,
me. It motivated me.
Okay.
Yes.
You would go in one ear and out the other?
Yes.
That's
What's
a little
unique
tip.
about the nonprofit space is you have to have equal parts passion
Yes.
and business acumen. And a lot of people think, I want to start Dress for Success because it's going to feel good. But if you don't have that business sense behind you, you're dead in the water. You don't make it 7 years later. And talk about where you are today.
Exactly. I mean, I honestly thought way back to my Chamber of Commerce days. I know I like to shout out to them because right out of college, that was the best education I could have ever received. I had to learn how to be a professional right off the bat. I mean, I had to learn how to work with different people. I had to see the structure of a nonprofit and how it works. And I would draw on that. That's what I used. I almost used their same structure to move forward.
That's smart. You take what works and you apply it to what you're doing and make it, adjust it to whatever you want to do. Can you give me one example of one of your greatest success stories, or give us let the people know how Dress for Success has been successful?
Can I give you
helping.
two really fast?
Oh.
I was at an event Thursday night, and these two young ladies came up to me that were absolutely fabulous, and they were asking a million questions about women in the workplace and using your voice. And I could tell they were really engaged, and they had they were really looking for answers. And I said, tell me a little bit about you. And they said, well, we're both clients of Dress for Success.
Oh, wow. Really?
Patti. They
Wow.
were amazing. I just wanted to sit and talk with them all evening. They had so much pride in where they were at and such drive for where they were going. And I think there's so much confidence that comes from, I feel good. I have this mentorship and I have this team behind me. And I think that's what Dress for Success has created. Do not let me speak for you. You give your story, but I was dying
That was pretty
to
good.
tell you mine.
That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I don't think I can beat that one.
that's
I mean,
good.
that's really good.
It was special.
But when we started, it was all about clothing. So we were just thrilled when someone got a job. But it has really, in 7 years, it's the whole package now because women are staying in our programs. That's how our program started. They would get clothing, get a job, and then they would want, okay, so what are you going to do now? So then we'd start a program. So then we started, it's called the Professional Women's Group. And the Professional Women's Group is mentorship, leadership, networking, and just watching all of them grow from 2019 when they started this program
Coming in and
to
saying,
now,
I just need an outfit for an interview.
They
I need
want
something professional.
Yeah, that's what they did. They, there's one in there that didn't feel worthy to even come in and get her interview outfit. And she just got done, which this is amazing.
Tell us.
She just, with another member from the PWG, they put together a whole budgeting workshop.
What's PWG?
professional women's group.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry.
Okay, yes.
They put together a workshop on their own to now start giving back and helping the new women coming in to the professional women's group. And when I watched them give that presentation, I don't know, it's just pretty incredible to know that you have the privilege. I have the privilege of sitting and watching and helping someone grow to their potential. And
then watching them pay it forward, right?
It forward.
It becomes a stance, like in their life, what you were saying. And it just seems like that's the beauty and the magic of what you're doing in philanthropy, is the fact that you can see it, the ripple effect, and see how it's changing the community and then your kid, and it's just this ripple effect. Yes.
I'm just curious, Nancy.
Yes.
When you think about the work you were doing 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and now the nonprofit space today, what advice would you give nonprofit leaders and philanthropists?
I think there's a wide open place for philanthropists, and particularly with women leaders. If you take as a model, for instance, Melinda Gates, I happened to read her book a couple years ago, and she talked about even though it's lots of money, and we don't have that kind of money to invest, but she talked about doing the investigation, of going to different countries, of gathering a group of people together that live there, listening to what they need, what they want, all of that. And then the men would leave and the women would gather, and they had very specific kinds of things that they wouldn't talk about in front of the men. So finding your space is really interesting. I am involved in two philanthropic organizations now, the Giving Circle and the Greater Good Council.
And you should talk. I would love to hear you talk a little bit about both of those.
Okay. Because it's an example of what I found in my life now after growing up with this stance, sort of always carrying it with me, instilling it in my children and so forth. Then after retirement, looking for something to do, actually. Volunteering was not what I wanted to do because I wanted more. I think when you volunteer, you have to give X amount of time, and you have to be there regardless of what it is. And my husband and I like to travel, and we have a large family and so forth, and I didn't want to say, oh no, I can't be there. So the Giving Circle gave me a way that fit with my philanthropic stance in we investigate community issues. We spend a lot of time doing research, talking to people, and to watch the networks grow is really interesting because when you talk about investing in the community, there's all kinds of investment you can make. And I learned this in another part of my life. But people talk about capital. It's money, basically. That's a very limited view.
Yeah, sure.
We have financial capital, we have knowledge capital, we
Social
have
capital.
Human capital, and we have huge social capital. And that's what I see with women philanthropy. So I see that it's not necessarily about giving money.
I could sit on that for a little bit because that's where women. That's where our strength
get it.
lies.
Yeah.
We get that.
Can you say that one more time? We get it. Yes, we get that.
And the same thing is true with what you were
Yes.
describing. It's not just about coming in and getting an outfit for an interview. It's about having confidence in your ability and poise, knowing other women that are doing a similar kind of thing and saying, okay, now what can we do to help other people understand it, other women understand it?
It's a holistic approach to giving,
Absolutely,
right? It's
it
not
is.
just the dress and it's not just the money, right? Because you were saying that women come in and this one woman came in and didn't even feel worthy. So that's an entire can of everything, right? To open and holistically, you have to look at that. And I think as women, you know, we tend to look at that more, right? Because we're immersed in the world of nurturing and what does it take for this person to succeed? It's not just the outfit. It's all of it, what you were talking about.
Yeah. Women innately build community.
And if you look at some matriarchal communities, you find that women find ways of helping each other. They help with the children. They help with, it's just sort of a natural kind of thing. I don't mean to suggest that men don't do that.
No, we love men on
We
this
love
podcast.
men. We love men. We also love the gifts. We all have gifts, right? And
I've been fortunate in my life to have some of the best men you can possibly imagine, which has allowed me to have this kind of stance.
sure,
It
we're
really
different,
has.
and we have different gifts, right?
Or to explore it, I guess, is what I would say. That the whole nature of what it means to invest in your community.
I love that story you told about sitting in the room and having the men leave, and then the women sharing the more of the story, right? Of what they wouldn't have shared if the men were in the room. Can you, that just makes me want to talk to you more about that, but I want to know if you have one success story about your philanthropy that comes to mind that you could share with us.
Oh, I have two, actually. I would
Okay,
say,
give it to us, honey.
No, I would say that
Yes.
the first is, and you asked a question earlier that I didn't answer, but it was about the family philanthropy, raising the future philanthropists, because I'm all about the future.
Yeah, we love future philanthropists.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that takes kind of a deep understanding of what that is.
Yes.
So it starts with just understanding that you're part of this larger community, and you if you share what you have, then everybody's better off.
Right.
So that's the initial attitude, and then the children find their own interests and use that stance to contribute in ways that they can. So we're hoping.
It's so
we haven't
magical.
had them grow up yet completely
Yes.
and see how it turns out in their lives, but I don't think it could possibly hurt.
I mean, I think that that's a good seed to just, plant. I'm going to go home and write in my, journal, to-do list, life goals. I want to raise kids and, that are philanthropists. And I want to be in a position to be like, even with the money that we have now, just where are we going to start doing that when I have conversations with my kids? It inspires me to make that a part of our DNA and our family, and to make it the stance of who we are intentionally. If we have more than this person, this is how we're going to divide it up. And this is what and I love how you just corrected yourself and you said we tell them what they should, and then you changed it and said we give the kids money and we say, well, this is what you could do. You could do a third here, a third here, a third there. So you just kind of, it's an offering of this is how we're going to help our community, and you're instilling that magic into your lineage and into the world, really,
And I can understand that because I was not raised that way. I was not raised to be with philanthropy.
Yeah.
And it really...
We didn't have any money, right? But
there's that.
But
there was
also,
that. I mean,
but also it's intentional.
It was, but coming here and then raising our children in this community, that's then when I learned about philanthropy, was this community.
And
this
community
is incredible.
Is amazing. It really is. And we don't get enough credit for that.
Anytime anybody brings up community, Northern Nevada, I have to get excited and just agree with you, because there's nothing like Northern Nevada when you see the way we support one another and the way we champion one another and the way we can come together in a room for a cause and all walk away on the same page, sometimes raising a lot of money, sometimes it's great awareness, but what happens in this community is unlike any other community I've ever seen.
So one of the other, as far as the professional philanthropist that I am now, I like to call myself a philanthropist. The latest project that the Giving Circle has worked on, and we do usually funding for 3 years, because we often fund organizations that don't have a history of funding, so it's harder for them to get state or federal funding or attract other donors. Not that we won't fund well-funded organizations that do incredible work, but we like to have them think of some new program, or because we like to take risks with the investing that other people might be, because it's also something else that women are more interested in doing. I think
taking risks. Okay, yes. I think we're gonna have you guys back to talk.
That was a bold statement. We can't end on that statement.
We're not
That's
gonna
bold.
end on it.
Patty's
We're gonna need to have you back.
a very good example of that. So the last program that we funded was actually a collective got together, lots of organizations in the community, what was needed to actually look at the state of youth mental health in the community. And we did something that we don't normally do. We actually funded a position that the position is at the Children's Cabinet because they do a large amount of that work. And so she's the coordinator.
And that's a
of all
position
of
that you
this.
went in and said, how can we help do this? And here's money for this. And it's and that's not, you don't think of that normally as, how
No.
you donate, right?
Right.
So I love
Right.
that you're
But
thinking
this
outside
is
of the
a
box.
reach to a lot of
Young
organizations
teen mental health. I love that.
that are involved in this, because otherwise this group does this, this group does this, this group does this, and it's hard to find time to talk to each other and so forth. So we hopefully created this space for the community to work on this together.
It's incredible. I'm familiar with it and the individual that's doing the work. And
Can we give her credit?
Annie Zucker.
Annie Zucker.
We'd love to give shout outs.
Have her here.
Oh, yes. She just moved. I love that. So shout out to the Children's Cabinet and Annie Zucker for what you're doing, because especially with youth mental health right now, I feel like there's this, I have children, they're 13, 11, preteens, and I'm seeing the effects from COVID, right? COVID hit, and I feel like they were expected to just go back into the community and go back to school, and it's supposed to be as it is. But we're seeing that COVID hit the kids really hard, and because I have kids that age, my heart is there, and so I'm looking at ways I personally can help, but to hear about the programs in the community that are focused on that, I think it's so important, especially with suicide rates in the community and all the other mental health issues. So thank you.
And
for
we've
doing
learned
that.
a tremendous amount from the work that Annie has done in just the brief time that she's been there. But one of the most important outcomes, immediate outcomes, is she has convinced us that we need to invest in the kids themselves, that they don't like to talk to adults about their issues, but they do talk to the kids,
Honey,
their friends.
you and I should talk. I have I have a program called Let the Kids Speak. So
What do you do? Yes, what do you do with that?
Right.
You have to give
Yes.
them. It's like growing philanthropists. You have to give them some
A platform.
ways of of looking at this, a plan for doing it, a little bit of structure so that there's some boundaries.
But also autonomy, because they know better.
But it's theirs.
Yes.
Yes, because they know, right? That's what I found as a parent, is they know what they need. And that's, during COVID, I think that's what I learned as a mom, is because I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on, right? And they would say, well, we don't want to do this, or why don't we do this, or I need a break. And I was like, because I was listening to them, thank God, I had the opportunity, because we have a home and we were a 2-family income, and I was stressed out, but I knew it was going to be okay. And so I had enough, wherewithal to listen to my kids go, this is what we need. We're not listening. But I think about those families, especially during COVID,
Yes.
who didn't have the resources that our family has. And the mental health in those communities is, I look at my kids now and see what we're struggling with, and I think about those children that are in those communities, and it breaks my heart. And so to hear about what you women are doing to help that, I think the impact for me, especially as a mother with a preteen who's like, what's happening? Are we listening? What can we do for our youth and our teens? For what you're doing in the ripple effect, it's just, as a mom, for me, it gives me a little bit of hope, and it inspires me to keep going and go, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
I would like to hear or give you each the opportunity to talk about how we or the community, individuals listening, can support your nonprofit, can support your efforts, can get involved if they want to get involved.
Well, thanks, Isla, for that. Dress for Success is very collaborative, and I don't know if the community understands when we say that, what we mean. This is a great podcast for that very reason, because, for example, we just want to be able to share resources with the women that are coming in that may be dealing with issues with their children, and push them out to the community that can support them. So first of all, I just want to make sure that the community knows that Dress for Success is there for everyone to come to. We started out as a referral agency for women looking for work. But what we discovered with COVID and everything happening is that, everyone out in the community is not going to a workforce development agency or somewhere to get support. So we have opened that up so that women can just call to us, whether they need clothing or networking or mentor or technology support, whatever they need. So I think just getting the word out so that we can reach more women throughout the community, that's extremely helpful. And the other thing too, we're growing. So I'm always looking for volunteers. Our volunteers have been with us for years, and they are our staff people. They have regular shifts. They come in every week, but we have a lot of different assignments that volunteers can do. And now we're opening a second location.
Well, I was just going to ask, where is your boutique store? I'm not sure what the Dress for Success location is called.
So Dress for Success will be staying in the same location on South Virginia. But during COVID, we opened up a store to just give us additional income to pay our rent, actually. Like, we're thinking, how are we going to pay our rent? So then again, it's just being resilient and figuring out how can you keep your doors open.
And it's where people can come in to
and
purchase.
Shop.
Okay, give us the address of that location, please.
Well, it's not open yet.
Oh, it's not. It's opening.
Well, we're actually, let me tell you.
Okay.
Okay. Quickly.
Sure.
Our current location, which is 2295 South Virginia Street.
Across from Heritage Bank by the Park Lane Movie Theater.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Very well.
And it's a space where we had to have the nonprofit on one half of the space and then the store, the boutique on the other half of the space. We have been packed.
Make it work, girl.
For years.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're blessed that we are able to move the retail store boutique out. So we are moving that to Midtown. And so now we have we have our nonprofit taking up the entire 2,000 square feet.
Wow.
There. Black Bear Diner. I mean,
Oh, right. Black Bear Diner. That was a better landmark than I gave, probably.
No,
Black Bear Diner.
everybody
El Pollo
knows
Loco.
El
You
Pollo
think
Loco.
Heritage Bank is huge.
Heritage Bank is,
And Park
it's
Lane.
right
Park Lane,
there. But yeah, so now we're able to,
Congratulations.
thank
That's
you.
amazing.
I have a question
Thank
for
you.
women listening or individuals listening who don't know. Can they donate professional clothes to you?
Can they donate?
Yes.
You take
Yes.
people's clothes that they donate.
Oh,
to.
yes. Okay,
That's another
so
way you can help.
you can help us by donating all kinds of clothing because we take professional clothing, but we actually help
Because you're
all
selling.
Well,
I'm
that's
sorry to
separate.
interrupt you.
So that's very confusing, which is another reason to separate the
This is
nonprofit
why
from
we
the
need
boutique.
to have these women
right?
back to talk to them about all the things. So
Yes.
you take donations. You
Our
take all
donations-
clothing donations.
All clothing donations.
Okay.
And the reason we say all is because for our nonprofit, giving out our clothing. So first of all, everyone, we give out clothing for free to women that are going out into the workforce. And
you have volunteers that style
yes,
women.
our volunteers are
Can
trained.
you tell I'm a huge fan,
I
Patti?
love that.
Oh my gosh.
I love that.
It's an experience. So it's an hour-long experience. A woman comes in, she's treated just like you would in, I don't know, I'm not going to name a name anymore because nobody does that anymore. I don't know. Maybe they do.
It's like concierge.
You know what it is. Yes.
Elevated experience.
It's your personal
holistic.
stylist. And
Yes.
speaking, I have to say one thing when you were talking about men, and I think they're incredible. However, they are not allowed anywhere near our appointments or our programs.
You don't want them to their opinions to weigh in on
Absolutely
the
not. I have to say that was something I had a big problem with
See?
when I worked retail.
Stay tuned for the second episode because I need the tea on that, honey.
man.
You have to come back and tell us all
Yeah,
about that.
no, that didn't go over well for me. I didn't like that. So no, men are not allowed to come in when someone has a personal styling appointment. But it's an hour-long appointment.
Like the husband or the boyfriend.
Whoever, yeah.
You're like, stay out here in the car.
Stay out here.
We got her.
Yeah.
We'll call you and let you know when you can come back and get her.
That doesn't look good on you. Doesn't work in my store.
Oh my
Nobody
goodness.
says that.
Yes.
Nobody says that,
Yes.
right?
Because it's hard enough to walk in the door and say, can I get help? I need help with that. Love that.
And
Okay.
we all know, we understand, we're sensitive to women coming in. A lot of women have never worn professional clothing or interview clothing before. So all of our volunteers, they have a dress code, they have to dress a certain way. You're not going to walk in, sweats or something and expect someone to put on something nice. And they're already feeling awkward being in the clothing. But, there's the other side of it. There's so much training that goes into training someone to dress professionally
or
for
to
a
get
job interview.
or dealing with the worthiness issue. Or so it's what I hear you saying, it's like a holistic approach to helping this person. It's not just about the outfit.
Absolutely.
And I think that's so important because you walk out with the outfit and then you're like, now what do I do? How do I do the interview and so you help them with that too, right? The behind the scenes with the job interview.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why our program's developed, because we couldn't just have someone look great and then say, good luck.
Bye.
That's pretty much,
They're like,
that doesn't work, especially when our volunteers are so tapped into this community and they're ex-professionals are currently working.
Right.
And they have huge networks. The women we see have already lost, I shouldn't say lost, but they are trying to catch up. Let me just say that. Women are trying to catch up no matter where they're at. And they want to be, I've said this from the beginning, they want to be you, they want to be you, they want to be you, they want to be you. And we want to help them be that person.
And you want to empower them to be the best version of themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's what I get from everything that you say is you are creating a space that women are comfortable in, and when they walk out, they are the most confident, empowered version of themselves to go into that interview or into that next conversation.
that makes that story that you told earlier about the two women that came up to you on Thursday at the event, that just makes it even more magical.
And can I say they were dressed very nicely?
May I?
Now, Nancy,
Bravo.
I am familiar with and a huge fan of both the Women's Giving Circle and the Greater Good Council. Is there anything about those groups that you want to share beyond the incredible work that you guys, all women, all with the intention of creating a better community?
Right. And I would say, as far as people not involved in those organizations, look for your community. Find a place to begin to make things better. It doesn't take any specific skill set. It doesn't take any specific thing. It takes a motivation. It takes diligence. It takes persistence. It takes tolerance of not being real successful, maybe, or not having the time, or all those things that we beat ourselves up over. But I can't think of anything better to do. And it can be, your church, or it doesn't have to be a new organization or something that you hear about, although it might be. So I would say open up your world and find a community.
I love that, because as a first-generation college student and also an African-American in this community, I listened to you talk about going into other countries and going into your community, but also, kind of going outside of your community. And so that means a lot to me to hear that, but I would love for you to just really quickly, if you would, talk about what that looks like in terms of like equity and when a community doesn't have as many Black and brown people, right? What that looks like for your organization. It's one of our values that we try to look at equity. We're all sort of fierce defenders of the idea of it. In fact, I had an experience not too long ago, and this was a different group of women, and I used the word, and I don't remember in what context I was using it, but we were discussing a book, and two of the women thought that equity meant equity in the financial world. And I said, no, I'm talking about... These are women your age or old, like close to your age that are educated women.
And I wanted to say, wow.
Did you say something?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and I just said, you need to be familiar with equity versus equality. There's a difference there. You need to think about things, open up your mind and let your education in that world begin.
So thank you for sharing that story, because for me, as a Black person, I see so many opportunities for there to be education in your community as a philanthropist and someone who is helping the community and giving money and has access to money. And so it's important for me to hear that. I think I just fell in love with you a little bit more. It is important for me to hear, and it inspires me and gives me hope that you are having those conversations in the rooms that you're in, because I feel like we could talk so much about the opportunities that you have as somebody who is in those rooms with other women who have money, and most of them in the community are white women who will not know what it looks like to not know what equity means or what it means for diversity and inclusion. And so the fact that you are speaking up about that, I think is another conversation that we need to bring you back and have, because it's important. And so thank you for saying that. It's important to me that, my white women friends are having the conversations about what equity and diversity is and what equality is, and to know that there are some women, right, who are only educated as much as they kind of want to be, or as they are, because they do stay in such a bubble. I think it's so important for you to have those conversations and speak out on that stuff.
Yes.
So
and we try to educate ourselves. That's another thing about community, I think, that you do.
And Nancy, I think this goes back to this historical perspective of philanthropy. This group of women in this community that really were the trailblazers for philanthropy, and I'm definitely including you as one of the leaders in that, have always been fierce advocates for the underserved. I'm thinking about Domestic Violence Resource Center when it was CAW.
Yes.
I'm thinking about multiple agencies that you guys advocated for fiercely when it wasn't necessarily top of mind or easy or comfortable. So this is where
I love it.
Legendary philanthropy began.
Yeah, I love it. And people listening are going to hear, I keep saying, well, we're going to have you back, but it's because we are out of time. And I hate to wrap this up, but
that flew by.
It did. The people that are helping with the podcast behind the camera have been so patient and are so great. But I feel like we just really need to have them back to do an episode 2, because there is so much more we can talk about. But I do want to say, thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you on the podcast, and we're going to have you back because I have so many more questions. But what you're doing, especially in this community, it matters to me as a mom and as a citizen of this world, that you are looking at how to help women and to elevate them, and that in turn, like you said at the beginning of our of us talking, it elevates the community, and so it matters to me. And so thank you for the work that you're doing.
Me.
And
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you for
It's so
recognizing
nice
the
to meet you.
importance of this, and thank you, Isla, for doing that.
This was a great
The
conversation. It
podcast,
was
it's
everything I hoped for and more. And I'm just honored that we got to spend this hour with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Founded in 1983, Nevada Women's Fund emerged to rectify the national disparity in funding allocated to women and women's organizations. Over the years, Nevada Women's Fund has contributed nearly $10 million in education scholarships and grants, fostering the empowerment of women across Northern Nevada. Today, Nevada Women's Fund remains dedicated to spotlighting and dismantling barriers to education and ensuring women receive the necessary support and opportunities to advance their professional careers. You can contribute to Nevada Women's Fund's mission by donating to their scholarship and grants program at nevadawomensfund.org or email info@nevadawomensfund.org to learn about more ways to get involved.